creativity is the ability to problem solve.
I'm always reading, I'm always researching, I'm always sketching and drawing. And
young artists are so creative and inventive and come up with so many unique solutions.
Last episode was for writers. This month is all about you artists. Join us as we collect wisdom from 3 notable alumni who have navigated their own paths in the art world, all in various ways. From the business perspective to the creative, we're breaking down all the many ways you can thrive in the art world after you've won your Scholastic Award. If you are a teen artist, you might be starting to ask yourself the following questions. Do I need an art degree to be an artist? How will I incorporate my love of art into a career someday? What steps should I take to become a successful artist? Whether you know you want to dedicate your life to art or need some guidance post-graduation, you are in the right place to find inspiration. Our first conversation today is with James Wells, whose entire life changed when he won a Scholastic Award in 2001 and was offered a full art scholarship to his local college. Today, he is a creative leader currently working as an innovative teaching and learning manager at Crayola. Knowing how impactful early recognition can be, James has committed his entire career to inspiring young artists, creatives, and educators. I recommend listening to this whether you're a teen or an educator, because we also talk about why creativity is crucial in the classroom and why it's so important to have creative thinkers in all careers. Hi, James. Welcome to the Scholastic Awards Podcast. So excited to chat with you today.
Yes, Avery, hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course. To start off, how about you just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I serve as the education content manager for Crayola, which you probably heard of that company before, been around since 1903. And in my role, I have the pleasure of helping to bring creative content to educators and parents around the globe. So, how did I land here? It's a bit of a organic slash interesting path, and I won't bore you with all of the details, but prior to Crayola, I served as the fine arts instructional advisor for a school system here in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an opportunity to speak at our National Art Education Association convention. And at the time, this was a workshop led by Crayola on creative leadership. And we were speaking about the same things. Our passions were aligned. And here we are, 7.5 years later. And I'm happy as can be to continue the work of spreading the joy of creativity all around.
That's awesome. I mean, so this episode in particular is really for our artists who maybe know they have a passion for art, but they don't know what they want to do with it, if they want to study it. So I love your story because it's such a true testament that you never know what's going to happen. You never know who you're going to meet. That's going to lead you to another opportunity, which is an important lesson. Can you please tell us about your Scholastic Awards experience and how that led you to being a creative person and an artist yourself?
Yes, so great question. And I absolutely love talking about my scholastic story because it truly helped me to be where I am, I believe, or at least it was one of the stones in the path that got me to where I am now. So, scholastics, this was over 2 decades ago, and I know I'm speaking to our artists who are currently in the program, but over 2 decades ago, scholastics was my opportunity to showcase, as with many of our listeners, to showcase your gifts and talents. And at the time, leading up to Scholastics, I didn't win any art contest competition, and I was in a very highly competitive arts high school. I went to a creative and performing arts middle school and high school here in Memphis, Tennessee. And gosh, we had such a great community of artists, very talented community of artists, and many of them won lots of awards. And it was as if I had to sort of wait for my moment, get in line because others needed that opportunity to shine and prevail. And things just sort of worked out for me. My senior year of high school was my my sing-song experience where I won, I think it was 5 gold keys and 2 silver keys in our regional scholastics in both my art portfolio and photography. So I think I was at the time the only student in the region to have a gold key in both portfolios. And that led to a full scholarship to college. So I was on a full fine arts uh, track to pursuing my BFA in art education. And I credit Scholastics for this because it gave me the opportunity and a platform to share my voice, my ideas, as it does with many other artists and as it has done for over 100 years. And, to be able to have that opportunity not only to have my voice represented on a platform, but this was done in a museum.
Mhm.
And to have my work hanging alongside artist professionals just really helped to boost my confidence. And then, of course, having the full scholarship to college, that really opened the door with,
Absolutely.
scholastics being the key, if you will, no pun intended, but the gold keys and the silver keys really unlocked the door for me to have or at least pursue a college degree in fine
Hmm.
arts. So Scholastics really carries a special place in my heart for giving me that platform as a young student and artist at the time.
That is such a special story and fascinating to hear that you were at an arts high school and middle school. So, did you feel a real change in your confidence once you won your gold keys your senior year versus kind of when you're in a mix of all these super talented kids?
Absolutely, yes, because I think at the time, I can't really recall any competition that I entered in where I actually won. So again, this was like the highlight moment for me to be affirmed that yes, James, you are a talented artist. And not that I was down on my confidence because I
Right.
did recognize that, I was in a pool of very talented students and peers. And the culture of our high school and our teachers, Dr. Ruck, Betty Burton, and others, they didn't really build a culture around competition. Like we knew
Right.
that that certainly helped to sort of boost the appeal for other students to want to come to the high school, but
Mhm.
it didn't create a sour culture amongst us students because
That's great.
we celebrated each other's wins. And for those who didn't get the wins, you were motivated to
Hmm.
continue to work hard so that you could at one point be in that first place or receive those keys. So um so it really, yes, to answer your question, I was over the moon. Like no one, I mean, people could certainly tell me anything, but no one couldn't tell me anything if you know what I mean. Like I
Absolutely.
have achieved the maximum or the pinnacle award, I felt at least, for my art career as it relates to my school experience. Right.
Hmm.
So Scholastics did that for me, and for that I am certainly grateful.
I love what you said about, the lack of competition in your high school of like you were just kind of motivating each other. I feel like that's the exact same environment with the Scholastic Awards is like once you get those kids all together, it's less about competition and more about we're in this together, we're pursuing the same path, which is so important. Moving on to your BFA program. So did you study so you were in BFA for undergrad, is that what you said?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So this is a huge topic of conversation with both artists and writers about do you need a BFA? Do you need to study studio art or illustration in college in order to go off and have a career in art? What's your opinion on that personally?
Well, I want to be clear. So yes, I have a BFA in art education as well,
Gotcha. Okay.
right? So, but art education major, I had a concentration in painting. So I
Right.
certainly had a very rigorous
Yeah.
studio experience, but I also needed to, take those education classes to get that art or at least K-12 art endorsement. So
Mhm.
in many ways it feels like a dual degree because
Yeah.
it was a grind, going through that program. But again, it built my artistic confidence, my talents, And for that, I'm totally grateful. So to answer your question in terms of BFA, is that necessary? I think this is what this
Yes.
that's the question. And I would say it depends, right, on the track that one would pursue. Now, we live in an age where, again, 2 decades ago, I'm graduating college, so the world was a bit different than it
Right.
is now, and we didn't have access to lots of online degree programs and various things. And I'm seeing colleges now where you can get an MFA online.
Yeah.
So I would say it just depends on the track that you're looking to pursue. So as an educator, I would encourage students, thinking about the backwards design. Think about your goals and aspirations, where you would
Hmm.
like to be. It doesn't have to be, 10 years, right? If you're in high school, where would you like to be in 5 years?
Right.
If you're graduating high school now, that's likely post-college. What career would you like to enter into? And then work your way backwards from there. If it requires a BFA, then get your BFA.
Hmm.
If not, there are lots of online courses, local classes, and things that you can take to continue to refine those skills. I would encourage you to do that. There are many artists friends that I know that pursued business degrees, but they
Hmm.
maintained their artist practice by taking classes, in college to again maintain those the skill building that's required in the art world. And they paired that. So now, I'm thinking about one classmate from high school. She runs an art business. She's a self-employed artist that runs her fine arts business. So she was able to marry the two, but she doesn't have a quote unquote BFA in that area. She has sort of again a dual path where she has a degree in business, but she's taken fine arts classes to really help to lift and build her artistic skills.
That's a phenomenal example of how you can fuse your passions into something that maybe in college you don't even know exists yet, and then after something can come from both of those, your major and your minor. I'm so curious about your arts education degree because I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who are thinking, "Wait, is that something I can do? I didn't know that that was a path I could pursue if I'm interested in art." So how did you find that? How did you decide on arts education?
Absolutely. So I was so inspired by my high school teachers and how they built relationships with us as students.
Hmm.
And I remember having a conversation with my teacher at the time. I was teaching in a summer arts program where kids, it was a Job Corps program actually, where kids were paid to create art. And it culminated in an arts showcase where kids performed on stage, and we had an arts display, and we sold the work, and we sold tickets, and the money from the show paid the kids for the following year. And that's a totally separate conversation that, if we get to that, great. But I'm saying that because it was through that experience where I became a quote unquote master teacher artist in the
Hmm.
program, that my teacher mentioned, hey, you should probably consider becoming a teacher. And I never thought about it at the time because I enjoyed pouring into youth and helping them to make good decisions in terms of their art thinking, but also their life experiences as well. And this was an opportunity. This sort of struck a bulb in me to say, this is certainly a viable career,
Hmm.
and in many ways it's safe. Right? It's something that I know that will be around for a
Yeah,
while, right? We need
absolutely.
teachers and educators. So again, this created an opportunity for me to blend my passions of the arts, of course, but also pouring into youth, and that led to me pursuing my degree in art education.
Absolutely. And it's a way for you to be surrounded by what you love every single day, which at the end of the day, that's what we're all looking for, no matter what aspect of the industry we're in, to be surrounded by
art in any way is kind of the dream. So,
Exactly. And then, to kind of connect that full circle moment, this is this is how Scholastics lives in the hearts and minds of youth. It's through
mhm,
art education, right?
absolutely.
Teachers are helping to build the skills of our youth that are able to shine through programs like Scholastics, which we're talking about here.
Absolutely. I mean, that leads me to my next question is why is creativity so important? I mean, if we're talking about a teen in school who thinks they are not an artist, which honestly you could say that's me. Visually, I'm not an artist. How can why is creativity in the classroom so important? How can that allow you to grow outside of just your stereotypical art job?
Exactly. So thank you. This is such an important question because this is part of the work that I do at Crayola,
Mhm,
where I help to educate others, our audience, our world, even on creativity. Now, there are many myths and misunderstandings about what creativity is.
mhm,
So, for the youth that's listening here, creativity is not about how well you draw or paint or sing or write. That is not creativity. Now, those skills certainly can help to lift and showcase one's creativity, but that's not creativity. Creativity is the ability to problem solve,
mhm.
the ability to make real world connections or connect disparate ideas or engage in the world around us. So there are many ways that we can showcase our creativity. And I think that's important to note that for any student that may be down on their confidence of their artistic ability, that doesn't mean that you're not creative because creativity is innate. We're all creative and we have different ways and approaches in how we bring that to life. So, creativity is certainly important because just kind of giving you some statistics here. This was from Forbes magazine. I want to say back in May of this year, 2024, there was a study among CEOs, and over 90% of CEOs state that they are looking for those who have creative mindsets in their workforce. And we
I
know that
love that.
90% of our world isn't visual artists or artists, right? So what does that mean? So that pushes us to dig, deep about, what is creativity exactly? And we all have it. You can problem solve,
Mhm,
right? And that's something that's important. That's something that our world needs.
mhm.
So, again, I want to affirm students in that, they are creative. It's not about your artistic skill set. It's about your mindset, you choosing and understanding that I am creative. So, yeah, I'll just kind of leave it there.
Yes, I love that answer. I mean, on a personal level, I love it because in 2020, during the pandemic, like so many of us, we had nothing to do. I have never considered myself an artist. I'm a writer, but I got really into painting. And like every painting I did, I didn't like, I would never think about showing it to other people, but it did exercise my brain in a different way that writing didn't. It was just a completely different visual exercise and amazing for your mental health as well. I think that's an amazing aspect for
There we
creativity as
go.
well.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, let's see. Personal voice and originality is crucial to the Scholastic Award submission process. It's one of the number one things that our jurors look for. So, how do you recommend that our teens kind of focus on honing in on their voice and finding their voice in terms of their art?
Yeah, so I would say, boy, that is a really important question for our young artists. And one of the things that I would suggest for them is, gosh, we live in a world now that has this proliferation of media and technology. And, I've served as a juror on lots of artists, panels, and competitions. And gosh, our student listeners at least, may be thinking like, I can't believe he's saying this, but put the phone down,
I
get
knew
away
you
from the computer.
Yep, I knew you were going to say that. I agree, not to be that old person, but I agree completely. I mean, I feel like I found creativity from being a kid and not having access to my phone all the time because boredom leads to creativity.
It does. And, one of the shining moments around creativity is giving yourself restrictions, right? So you cut off possibilities and you work within the constraints.
Mhm.
So if I am cutting myself off from looking at images, downloading images, and replicating things, all right, so now I got to use my creative mind to figure out, okay, what is something I'm truly passionate about? Where can I find my voice? Maybe it's on a walk, right? And I notice something, and in the moment, I want to capture it. Maybe that's when you pull your phone out and you take a picture,
Mhm.
or you
Mhm.
begin to take notes and things. So getting away from the phone and technology and really sitting with your thoughts and thinking about what are the things that I'm truly passionate about. And the beauty of art is it has this magical way of connecting with others and people being able to tap into what your passions are. So I think that, cut the phone off, go for a walk, or do like a no technology day one day, right? Maybe you have it Monday through Friday, and maybe Saturday or Sunday on your weekend, you decide, I am going to step away from the phone. I'm going to go for a
Mhm.
walk and I'm going to think about the things that I'm most passionate about. And I'll capture that in my notes and begin to develop my voice and how I would like to express that through visuals or through written work or a
Amazing
combination of both,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. And for anyone listening who thinks, oh my gosh, I can't go like 30 minutes without looking at my phone, which I understand immensely, I use the Pomodoro method, I believe it's called, which is when you will work for 45 minutes, do something creative, go on a walk for 45 minutes, then go on your phone for 15 minutes, and then repeat. You go through those cycles. So you give yourself a little bit of that dopamine hit, but you're
There we go.
still you're still getting off your phone and, having that creative time. So that's so important.
Welcome to Hot Seat. This is the segment where we ask our guests a speed round of questions about life, creativity, and everything in between.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay, number one, Crayola crayons, markers, or colored pencils.
Whoa, that's a really good one. I would have to stick with the classic crayons, of course.
Bold colors or neutrals.
Ooh, I think I'm a bold color.
Would you rather take a ceramics class or a painting class?
Painting, I'm a painter.
Which do you like drawing better, people, places, or objects?
Let's say people.
Would you rather go to a photography exhibit or a history exhibit?
Can it be both? A history exhibit that features photography?
You know what? Yes, I allow that.
Okay.
Would you rather spend the day at a museum or spend the day in nature?
Let's go with nature. Nature is a museum.
Do you enjoy working from home or working in a studio?
I enjoy working from my home studio. Does that work?
Keep beating these questions. I love it. Totally counts. If you had to make a piece using one color, what color would you pick?
Blue.
And to finalize everything, what is your favorite crayon color?
My favorite color is it comes from our most recent Colors of the World color line. And I would say it is medium deep golden, which is my actual skin tone.
That's
So there we
incredible.
go. Yes,
That's a
this
fantastic
line,
answer.
yes. I just wanted this line for our students that's listening. This line, Colors of the World, was designed based on Pantone skin tones from around the world, and so you should, if you have an opportunity, go and see what your tone is. But mine's medium deep golden.
Oh, that's so great. Amazing answer. And we'll link that in the show notes. So if you want to see what color skin tone your crayon color is, you can do that. James, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It was so inspiring. And I know our listeners are going to take so much away from it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we're talking to 1993 alum Matthew Ronay. A New York based artist who creates organic sculptures, Matthew's work has been exhibited in institutions all over the world. Talking to Matthew reminded me about how every single artist has a different path and career journey. You never know who you're going to meet in an elevator one day, who might connect you with someone in the art world, or how your life could completely change by taking a chance and submitting your work. You never know unless you try. Please welcome Matthew Ronay.
I'm a sculptor. I'm almost 50. I live in New York. I grew up in Kentucky in Louisville, and I mean, I live a pretty provincial lifestyle. I spend all my time in the studio. I work like 6 days a week. I really enjoy working. It centers me, and it's a large part of the identity of what I do is kind of being here, researching, reading, working, sculpting, socializing, looking at the internet, wasting time, like the usual kind of creative
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, I've been living in New York for 25 years and just grateful and feel lucky to be able to be a working artist.
Hmm.
It feels like a miracle.
Absolutely. And
Sometimes.
so many of our teens listening want to do exactly what you are doing today. So we kind of want to pick your brain and find out, how did you get there? What were the steps that led you to being a full-on working artist?
Well, when I was in middle school, I grew up in the 90s, I guess, late 80s, 90s, like as a teen. And back then, like pre-internet, like you had to kind of roam around and try to meet older kids and figure out what you were into by word of mouth and stuff like that. And one of the things that I did was skateboarding,
Mhm.
and then was like part of a punk music scene. And with a friend of mine, we had like a zine, a punk zine, where we interviewed older kids and reviewed records and went to shows and like, we're just being like annoying little punk kids. And we needed photography for it. And so I started photographing.
Mhm.
And I was really lucky to have supportive parents. I mean, I grew up in the Bible Belt, but I grew up without organized religion and
Mhm.
really not very many rules. A lot of Gen X people grew up in a kind of anarchic parental style. So I was just at an early age, just roaming all around on public transit and just really had no supervision. And then I, when it was time to go to high school, one of the things that was available to me was to go to a magnet school.
Mhm.
And so my parents I didn't really know I wanted to be an artist, but I knew I wanted to study photography. And my parents wanted me to go to the school because you could study for extra college. You could study college credit as a high school student and
Mhm.
shorten your time, and school hence shorten your debt. And so I went under the auspices that that's what I was going to do. But once I realized there was art available as well, I wanted to study photography.
Mhm.
And you couldn't just study photography. You had to take foundational courses like design and drawing and stuff like that. And so I was disappointed, but I signed up for a drawing class so that I could build up drawing, and then the next term design, and then study photography. And when I got into this drawing class, like I just really responded to it.
Mhm.
And so along the first term, like when they have parent teacher or whatever it's called, like my parents came in and the teacher was like, you should let your son be in the visual arts program, And so I feel fortunate that my parents weren't like, are you talking about? Like, you gotta like,
Yeah.
can't do this. Like, how are you gonna get a job? What the hell does this, But and you have to remember also, like, it was even rarer back then because there
Right.
wasn't really a market for young artists or and I didn't have any really artistic people in my family. I mean, I had some entrepreneurial people, and I had some people that in my family, like my grandfather, that did craft, upholstery, and stuff like that. But we didn't really have any role models in our family. So regardless, my parents let me do it, and from there, I just really just spent all my time working, and I think like I mean, I feel like ambition is a weird word to use, but I think more like my determination to do the things I wanted to do. So
Mhm.
for me at the time, that meant photography. And so I was hell bent on learning how to draw and like buzz through all the foundational courses so that I could do what I wanted to do. But along the way, like I figured out, I enjoyed drawing and painting and other kinds of things as well. And so I kind of not bullied my teachers, but I like over my time in high school, I figured a way out to gain my teachers' trust so that I could have more freedom to do what I wanted to do. And so going to a magnet school helped because we had like colleges come in, and I don't know what they do anymore, but like look at our portfolios and kind of help guide us and also recruit us because they wanted our money and they wanted students to their business as a college, but like help us figure out how to get into college. And so I applied to a couple of schools. And also I attended some summer programs like at the Art Institute of Chicago and
Mhm.
Kansas City Art Institute. And I met a lot of other young kids that were like my age that were like, you know, were from maybe more, definitely the kids that were from Chicago, like were more in tune with what was going on in the art world.
Yeah.
And and I also met some kids in my town that were like in famous bands that were like art school dropouts that were like, I mean, if I was like 16, they were like 20 something and they had already like gone to art school and kind of figured out they didn't want to do it and became like indie musicians and stuff. But they were really formative for me to have someone to explain to me what art school was like.
Right.
Went to art school, was lucky enough to get like some, aid with scholarships and stuff. I went to art school in Baltimore at the Maryland Institute College of Art. Um, and just kind of continued to bully my teachers into letting me just study independently.
Mhm.
Um, and so I had an apartment off campus that I used as like a studio, and just started to kind of build up an aesthetic and a way of working. And I kind of like sped through the history of art, like had a stint as conceptual artist, like did painting, like kind of did a lot of different things until I kind of fell into making more sculpture.
Mhm.
Went to Italy for a little bit as a term abroad, which was really helpful to me just to not be with great facilities and to not really be able to do exactly what I wanted to do and to kind
Right.
of um, take time off from the progression that I had kind of envisioned for myself to kind of study opera and to read contemporary Italian literature and just spend time in Europe and kind of get a different vibe for what was going on. And then completed my last year at Maryland Institute, like basically studying independently,
Mhm.
like just because I had already fulfilled all my requirements, and applied to grad school, like straight from undergrad, mostly just as a way to extend my freedom before I
Mhm.
had to get a job and try to live a true adult life. And was lucky enough to get accepted to go to Yale to complete my MFA. And then from there, just moved to New York and had some jobs as a freelancer making work for other artists, fabricating, because I picked up a lot of like skills along the way. Um, and then, at the time in New York in the early 2000s, like young artists, like that market was just beginning.
Mhm.
Like people could buy things for pretty cheap and you could kind of make enough money to, things were so much cheaper. Like my first studio was like $300 or something. And
Amazing.
I was lucky enough to then like sell a piece before I had a real gallery directly to a collector. That was quite a large piece that I was paid in installments, and that kind of allowed me to not have a job and to focus on making a body of work that would eventually be like, the work that I presented in my first solo show in a gallery in LA. I
Mhm.
used my contacts, obviously, from like all those other stints, in Baltimore, or Yale is in effect is a kind of professional school. I mean, as in the same way that I think for business people or lawyers, like you may meet people in grad school, at least at that time, that may help you to uh, have a gallery or meet a curator or something,
Right.
that, people along the way that will really help you. And I found even to this day, those are still people that are really important to my um, career or whatever, whatever I do. And so I think like, I mean, in the end, it's like a lot of luck.
Mhm. And
Um,
hard work as
and
well.
and hard work, yeah, but I say luck first just because I feel like right place, the right time, like, like I came from a place of privilege too, and so I think it's not all just like some elbow grease that, made it all happen. There were, there were just a lot of things that were tolerant. Um, and then hard work, I think definitely is the major part of it, without determination and hard work and kind of fearlessness of risk, like I would take a lot of risk to like not have a regular job that gives you
Mhm.
freedom, and it's like those things don't always work out.
Absolutely.
And there's no, guarantee, just like anyone with any job, that you can't get fired or lose your job, lose your gallery, like lose
Yeah.
whatever. And so, um, it is a lot of luck.
Mhm.
But I think also, like over all the years, even including in my earliest experimentations with making things, like I really was guided by what made me feel absorbed and what made me feel fulfilled. And I think I strove to keep those things like real. And so I think like when you work from that position, like you can become a little bit more impervious to criticism or hard times or fear, because you're working from a place of like your perceived honesty or whatever. And so I think like even as a young person, like the people that came into my life, like mentors, teachers, like people that I studied with, like always kind of encouraged me to do what felt right and was fulfilling. And so I kind of was guided by that, those things. And um, yeah,
Fantastic. No, I so appreciate you giving us all those nitty-gritty details because I know that's what everybody wants to hear because everybody's path is so drastically different. And
yeah,
a lot of it, I know what you mean by luck. It's you end up in an elevator with someone one day who leads you to a job you didn't even know existed, anything like that. Something I'm gathering from your past is just that you were so sure of yourself from a young kid. You were sure that you wanted to go into the arts in some capacity. Do you have any wisdom or advice for our teens listening who maybe don't have that confidence in themselves yet? They like what they're doing, but they don't know that they can really commit to something like that at such a young age because the world so often says that teens don't know what they want to do, which we know
right.
is not true.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to put myself in the position of someone who didn't have that,
For sure.
but I mean, I think that I would say that like even though I knew or know what I want to do, I'm deeply anxious and deeply insecure when I'm not in the studio. And so I think that like the great thing about being an artist, even though it's terrifying and in some ways cruel, is that the studio really is a kind of um like sanctuary, and that you know like it's easy to hear your own judgment in the studio, and it's easy to kind of work around that and kind of keep it at arm's length to kind of get rid of your parental voice, you know,
Right.
and to allow yourself to fail or be jazzy or whatever it is that you know that you need to do in the studio. And so I think that like for people who aren't really sure what they want to do, I think trying to create some sort of studio practice, whether it's in a bedroom or a closet or in the forest, like I think it, the results are hard to see, but if you begin to do something creative, you will either feel magnetized to it or not. And so I think like my feeling is for people who try creativity and aren't sure, if you try to leave it aside, if you can't leave it aside, then you're for sure that you need to do it, you know? So like go without and find out what you really need, you know? And so and I think the great thing about creativity is that especially nowadays, like there's so many different kinds of creative outlets, like from, I mean, they're just everywhere, from design to architecture, dance, performance, writing. Like, I mean, we live in a creative world now, especially with social media and just every other, I mean, everything is about creativity and kind of
Absolutely.
marketing and like, you know, all that. And so I think that it's like, creativity is an interesting field to be involved with because even if you at a certain age think you want to be, you know, this kind of creative person, like they're all really connected. It's a kind of thinking that is really connected. And I think like you don't lose if you decide you're a dancer and you decide you want to make poetry, you don't really lose by changing your medium. You may lose experience and you may not be like the top of your on the top of your game if you decide to change, but I think they're all really linked. And so as scary as it can be to enter the creative field because it's a commitment, it's like you'll never lose the time that you put into your creativity because you can even if you decide to be in business, it's like there's
Absolutely.
great creativity in business and everything else too. So I think it's a critical thinking and a problem solving and a way of thinking outside the box, and it's a way of kind of turning down the outside noise and just focusing on your thing. You know, if you wanted to be a like an artist that works, you know, in a spiritual way and in a way that's like deeply personal and all that, like really you just need to log the hours, in my opinion, and get the experience of, you know, having highs and lows and working around all your kind of all the difficulties and stuff. And so like you'll never truly know until you're like, you know what I mean? It's like
Absolutely.
you could be 10 years into working at some great gallery and then realize it's not for you really, you know? So it's like I think it's hard to know what you want to do, but I think mostly just because when people think about the concept of like what do I want to do, it somehow involves looking at yourself from like some other perspective, you know? And so I think if you try to do what feels absorbing, you know, what it doesn't necessarily need to be a great feeling, but it's like whatever kinds of things you're magnetized to and feel absorbed by, you should listen to those feelings and kind of don't don't take them lightly, because it's like if you're enjoying it, then it's like you'll do a better job and it will make you feel healthier, and you know you won't be burning working hard won't be a chore because you'll be absorbed and you'll be enjoying it.
Absolutely. So since you've been in a education setting for a long time now, how
Mhm.
would you say, you know, over the years you've gotten constructive criticism and comments about your work? How did you stick to your own personal voice and your vision for your work without letting anybody steer you in a different direction?
I mean, I think I've experienced praise and real criticism, and I think that I I had a mentor say to me, I once had a bad review in the New York Times, and it was painful. And I called a mentor of mine to kind of just get, probably looking for reassurance, but
Mhm.
instead of offering reassurance, what they said to me was, well, now you're an experienced artist, you know? And that really stuck with me at that moment in my life, because I felt like, okay, this feels terrible, but like everyone will experience, if they're, even if they're lucky enough to have their work reviewed, and maybe people don't like it, and how do you react to that? Um, and then I think like when you also are praised, you can't really totally believe that either.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you're going to believe the bad stuff, you have to believe the good stuff. And for me, it's harder to believe the good stuff, and easier to believe the bad stuff. And so I always try to keep that in my mind, that those are my tendencies, and to like try to have perspective there, not to be too hard on yourself, or at the same time, not be an egoist, and not believe, not to construct some sort of, you know, grand idea about what you've done or what you've
Mhm.
accomplished, and to kind of stay humble. Um, and I think maybe though, through all those things, like, um, I mean, maybe it sounds weird because I keep coming back to it, but it's like, as long as I can feel that I'm pushing forward and still absorbed and still really care deeply about what I do, the situations that are outside of me,
Yes.
I try as hard as I can to not let them ruin my pleasure,
Mhm.
and so some of that is like just growing emotional intelligence through experience. I'm a meditator. I really believe in that. Like, I believe into kind of like practicing a little bit of detachment from your emotional voice, to not get to practice at least not getting carried away
Yeah.
with obsessive thoughts, and not getting carried away with anxiety, to be able to at least recognize when you're feeling anxious, depressed, if you're spiraling, if you're feeling sorry for yourself. Um, and then I think like I I also like just try to live a little bit of a cautious lifestyle, like by
Mhm.
saving money, and kind of, I've at this age, I've been through ups and downs, and so I think it's good to be prepared for. I don't think all anxiety is bad, and so I think some of it, like imagining bad scenarios, can help you to not be surprised if things don't go the way that you wish that they did,
Right.
or whatever. But I think like, I mean, I think even, you know, I in the end, I guess I would say, like, from the perspective of someone else, like I wouldn't trust the way that my career, or my life thus far is presented. Like, it's not been, um I'm not like I've said before, I'm a deeply anxious person, and like, it's not easy,
Of course. Mhm.
and so I think that's part of it. I mean, I think that artistic people, like, even if it's a cliche, are somehow more open to feeling the experience of being alive. And it's not it's it's difficult, there's a part of life that really is about suffering, and so it can be hard, and to acknowledge that is not the end of the world, but it's also really beautiful if it does work out, to be able to wake up and read for a couple of hours and do some research and come and do some work, and you know what I mean? Like, it can be really
Absolutely.
nice too. And then lastly, I think, like, depending on what your practice is, like, people who are if anyone listens to this, like, it would be important to acknowledge that my practice is very solitary.
Mhm.
I enjoy being by myself. Like, I work in a very traditional studio practice. Like, I work from my subconscious. Like I have an unjudgmental approach to um my content, and so, like, this is the place from which I speak.
Mhm.
I'm not like, an artist that's running a business with like 10 assistants, and, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
it's different. And so, I, you know, that it's important. I think I want to acknowledge that, just that my advice comes from a very specific place of a person who's okay to be by themselves, to who likes to work long hours and do the things that I do. And so like those things strengthen the practice, so like on days when I'm not feeling my best, like I still come to the studio and like, you know what I mean? Like maybe I'm worried about money, or maybe I'm worried about like, whatever that people worry about, but I come here and I work out a lot of those feelings like through work. And
Yeah.
I think that's important,
So important. I mean, what I'm hearing from you really is just making sure that you hold on to your intrinsic motivation as opposed to your external motivation, instead
Totally.
of hearing, holding on to being an artist because you're getting praise and because you're hearing things or you're winning awards, making sure that this is something at the end of the day that makes your heart beat and makes you want to keep doing it. I think that's so valuable.
Totally. I mean, I think that would be true also for entrepreneurs and for politicians,
Anything.
probably even, like it's like you have to believe in the thing that you're doing. And it's like even for me, for example, like the way that I work, I don't actively search for inspiration. I have a lot of different practices and things that I do within the main practice. So like I'm always reading, I'm always researching, I'm always sketching and drawing, and I don't I I have a lot of routines that I can keep in place even when I'm not feeling my best. And so I don't need to worry about like what my next big idea is going to be, because I'm IDing like all the time, and I'm just trying to like, and that way I don't feel bad if like, if I make a sketch and it's really stupid, it's like, it doesn't matter. I turn the
Right.
page and start a new one and do that. And so, I mean, those were things that my earliest teachers taught me too, and I think that's part of, I mean, it's the same in sports. It's like, you got to learn to turn the page and you know what I mean? So it's like, I think these are ideas and practices that people can use in any walk of life. And I think creativity is just a little bit different because you're often working without the acknowledgement or the financial rewards that other people get from putting in hard work. And you have to be okay with that too, and it's not the worst. I mean, you know what I mean? It doesn't not, I mean, in America, most people desire to be rich and to have lots of lots of material. But I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing to work in a place that doesn't value that maybe as much, and that they're not as connected, and so I think like, when I was like 15 or 16, like of course there was Picasso and Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns and like all of the obviously like musicians and actors and stuff and writers who are famous too, but it wasn't as clear that a young person could make so much money like making art, and so I like maybe it's different for young people now because there are so many ways to monetize creativity.
Right.
But that being true, it doesn't change the fact that like things are just going faster now. So you may be able to monetize what you do this year, but maybe next year, there's somebody there to replace you. And that was true back in the day, and it's true now, and it will always be true. And so I think that for that reason, it's important to like you were just saying, to like internalize your absorption and worth and all those things, and then people can't take them away from you,
Absolutely. Taking it back to what you said before, I just have to say I love the word ideaing. Is a brilliant way of putting exactly what an artist and a writer does, is making sure that you always have that creative brain switched on. And I think you know when you're an artist, when you can't shut that off, when it's happening no matter what.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all of this really honest and just really detailed explanation of what being an artist is like. This is Hot Seat.
Okay.
Which do you prefer, planning your pieces or improvising as you go?
Improvise, then plan.
Bold colors or neutrals?
Oh man, it depends. I mean, I think I would be more known for my bold colors. I'm colorblind. So I think more subtle colors feel more sophisticated to me because I can't see them and understand them as well. But I would say intuitively, probably bold colors.
Do you work in silence or with music?
I work with a lot of machinery, so it really depends. I mean, it really depends, but I think like right now I've been like listening to The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, an audiobook. It's like a 60-hour audiobook. So it really depends. It depends on like what I'm craving. But I would say in general, probably more likely to be listening to something.
Who would you rather get a coffee with in this fictionalized world? Michelangelo, Van Gogh, or Picasso?
Jeez. I guess Van Gogh. I don't know why. I feel like he might be a misanthrope. So maybe that's what makes me think maybe not. Definitely not Picasso. Maybe I'll answer by saying definitely not Picasso.
Which museum would you rather spend the day at? The Louvre or the Metropolitan Museum of Art?
Metropolitan.
Do you enjoy large museums or small galleries?
I guess a large museum. I don't know.
What is an art medium you haven't explored yet, but you want to, if there are any?
3D printing, maybe. I mean, I've barely experienced it. I work so by hand. And so it's very interesting to me, like what 3D printing offers. And in my minimal amount of research and actually doing it, it's been quite fascinating because there's a lot of chance that is possible with the computer and the brushes and the way that you can do things with 3D printing, which is crazy. That would be impossible to do like in wood or whatever.
What are you currently working on, if you could tell us?
Well, I'm gonna make a show in Paris next May. And I've been working on some works for that. Right now, I'm working on a sculpture. I don't really know exactly how to describe it. It looks like a hairy peanut that has like a weird vaginal fold on it. And above it are all these weird ganglia, udder-like looking things. But the whole thing altogether looks like some sort of like fantasy architecture.
Ooh, amazing. Well, the artists listening will understand how difficult it is to describe what you're working on. And our last question is, where can our audience find you? A website, Instagram, anything you want to share?
Interesting. I'm currently not using Instagram that much because it makes me feel like an insane person.
Understandable.
And I wish that it didn't. I go through periods where I use it because I feel healthy enough to use it, and I'm, like I feel that it doesn't make me feel terrible. Right now, I'm not really using it. I have a website. It's called hideamongthetrees.com.
Great.
It doesn't have any text on it. It's just rolling images.
That's what we want.
I do have an Instagram, so there are a lot of images on there. It's at Mysterious Fog. I just don't post that often because it makes me feel crazy, so I don't use it. But I mean, I have a gallery in New York called Casey Kaplan. I have a gallery in Copenhagen called Nils Stark. They have images of my shows, and then I think I also have a couple of books. So if you search for me on Amazon, I have 2 books. I just made a book like 2 years ago that's pretty good way to look at what I do and stuff like that. So
amazing. Okay, we will link everything below so everyone has access to it. Thank you so much again, Matthew. This was so fascinating. And
Thank you. Thanks for getting in touch.
Yes, of course.
And finally, we're wrapping up today's episode with a conversation with Sasha Baskin, a 2010 Gold Key Portfolio Award winner and a practicing weaver and lacemaker. Sasha received her BFA in drawing from the Maryland Institute College of Art and her MFA in Craft and Material Studies from Virginia Commonwealth University. As a professor today at Johns Hopkins University, Sasha discusses why studying art in college is so important, even if you do not see yourself becoming an artist full-time in the future. We need artists in medicine and in law. We need to embrace both the right brain and the left and find nuance within creativity and STEM fields. I was also inspired by Sasha's inventiveness. She is a reminder to every artist to stay true to your own vision, take risks in your art, and to never stop exploring.
Absolutely. I'm a fiber artist and a drafts person, a drawer. I am currently a faculty member at Johns Hopkins University, where I teach drawing and fibers. And I am particularly making lace and woven images these days. I make bobbin lace portraits of pop culture starlets. It's kind of my bread and butter. And I look at pop culture and celebrity culture as kind of a modern mythological system and a new creation of gods and goddesses. And so I look at kind of the background characters of a lot of reality television shows, not usually not the big stars, usually
Mhm.
the kind of minor players, and find a lot of often Greek mythological references for them.
So fascinating. So how did you discover that? That's such a unique, something so unique that I think a lot of artists wouldn't think of. So I'm so curious to know how you found that.
Well, there's kind of two answers to that question. The first being that I studied drawing in school in undergrad. I was one of very few drawing majors.
Mhm.
They're eliminating it from a lot of art school curriculums, which really breaks my heart.
Mhm.
Um, and I really, really wanted to learn how to draw. I was really passionate about portraiture, and I really wanted to learn how to communicate a likeness. When I was actually a teenager, I had a jaw surgery that changed the way that my face was structured.
Mhm.
And so it really made me passionate about understanding how we look the way that we look and how do we communicate that visually. So I was really, really interested in portraits. I did a lot of this intensive classical drawing training. And then I was really kind of struggling to get anybody to pay attention to them. Um, and so I kind of turned to weaving
Mhm.
as this other method to draw. And I was looking at fiber and yarn as line quality and as line and tone and value. And that was really, really fun for me. And so that kind of set me on a fiber trajectory.
Mhm.
And then in the pandemic, actually, when I had been working on a lot of large and really fancy and computerized and technical looms that lived inside institutions, all of those got shut down, right? When all the schools closed.
Right.
And so I started looking at bobbin lace as another method, still with those same line and tone and value, to communicate the same goals as my weaving, but on a smaller scale. I could do it on my coffee table,
Mhm.
under a Zoom meeting, really, and no one knew when I was in a faculty meeting that I was
Yep.
making bobbin lace. So that's kind of how I arrived at my technical process.
Okay.
And then the conceptual process was basically in grad school, became obsessed with The Bachelor.
You're talking to the right
Um,
person.
I just thought it was fascinating. I thought it
Mhm.
was psychological torture. I
Yep.
thought what we were doing was just insane,
Yep.
as a culture and as a society. And I would kind of like hold court at parties and like take over a whole conversation and really give like a whole dissertation on this. And a really good friend of mine kind of tapped me on the shoulder and was like, you either need to shut up about this or you need to start making work about it, because you can't keep doing this.
Great advice. I love that.
Great friend, still a good friend to this day, and I really credit him with. I was like, oh yeah, I really do. And so I've kind of picked new pop culture universes every so often, but it's really been it's been he changed that game for me.
Wow, what a great way to combine two of your passions and put it into one kind of format. I have to know, do you explore the Love Island universe as well?
I haven't done Love Island yet, but it has
Okay.
been recommended to me. I've dipped my toe into Love is Blind a
Oh,
little
great.
bit.
Excellent, excellent. Yes.
And recently I've been really into the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders documentary. That's
Okay.
been a really
Gotta
fun
check that
little
out.
universe for me too.
Amazing. Okay, so let's go back to your Scholastic Awards experience. What did you enter in? What did you win for? What was that like for you? And just how did that affect your confidence as an artist?
My first Scholastic experience was in middle school, actually. I had a really wonderful art teacher who it was a watercolor painting that I had done in like 20 minutes. It was a really fast one-off day in eighth grade.
Mhm.
of a tree. And he really, really liked it. And he was like, we want to submit it to this thing. And I had never heard of Scholastic before. And I won. I won a gold key with that painting, and it was incredible. It was a really kind of it was a really kind of pivotal moment in my life, uh, where, you're in middle school, there's a lot of different passions and a lot of different ideas, and to have somebody kind of validate that and see what I was doing as something really worthwhile was really pretty revolutionary. And then through high school, I was really fortunate. My mom was really supportive, and my parents and my family were really supportive of my interest in art. And so they kind of spearheaded a lot of the parental volunteer element of Scholastic. And we didn't at the time, I think, have a super strong Scholastic program. And so we kind of, after having this experience in middle school, we were like, we should do this again. And we got a lot of other folks from my high school involved in it and entered into it. And I think a lot of us had a lot of success. And I think I entered most years that I was eligible in high school, and I won a gold key portfolio when I was a senior, which was a really, really wonderful experience.
That's amazing. So how did you get into art in the first place? I mean, if you were a middle schooler doing this, was there a moment when you were young, or like, I don't know, a special influence in your life who kind of allowed you to explore your creative side?
I think I've always been really passionate about it. I think I've always wanted to make things with my hands. I've always been a knitter. When I was very, very little, my parents still like to remind me I would make little Sculpey penguins all the time. And I was obsessed with making the tiniest one I possibly could, which now, looking at my obsession with bobbin lace, feels like a real linear path to, I like things tiny and detailed. And yeah, I don't think there was one kind of moment. I think it's always been something I really loved.
Yeah.
I did a lot of creative writing as a child also, so I think there was a lot of creative energy. And I've always really liked art and creative making because there isn't a right answer.
Yes.
In school, I have a really good memory, and I was really good at memorization. And so I was really good at kind of like getting like remembering a math theorem, or, memorizing some element of biology. But I liked when there wasn't something that could be that quickly kind of captured and regurgitated, that there was more interpretation and a real challenge.
I think so many creatives can relate to that. It's like one of the only moments in life where you can just like not have an exact answer, and you can kind of just let your brain play and explore. And I think that's what we love so much about it. So in terms of your education, because this podcast in particular, this episode is really centered for teen artists who maybe aren't sure how they want to use their artistic skills post high school, if what they want to major in, how they want to navigate their life post grad. In your opinion, do you think that you need an MFA or a BFA? Do you think that education is kind of crucial for an artist, or is that something that you can kind of teach on your own?
Oh, that is such a good question, and I don't think there's one answer.
Fitting.
I've been really fortunate to kind of traverse all of those different worlds. My undergrad experience was at MICA, the Maryland Institute College of Art. So I did do that like art school, BFA, 6-hour classes. I think it's like 70% studio, 30% liberal arts. So that's that.
That's great.
It was a really, really wonderful opportunity, and like a really unique opportunity to be able to dive that deeply into a practice. And then my MFA experience was at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, which is a public university with a really strong art program. And I was assisting and teaching in those undergrad classes, which are much shorter, twice a week. And it's, I think, still a BFA program, but kind of more existing within this context of the larger university. You get non-art minors taking the classes. So you get both. And I think they're both super valid. As a teacher and an educator now, I'm not the biggest fan of going into college looking specifically for a career path.
Uh-huh.
I think education for education's sake is one of the most beautiful and special things we can do. And I think if you find something that makes you excited to do it and learn it, that's what you should do. Because doing something because you think you're supposed to, you're not going to learn it, you're not going to want to do it. But doing something that kind of makes your heart sing is,
Absolutely. And something that I was always told as a writer was you need to take all other classes so you know what to write about. And I assume that that's similar with artists as well, as you want to expand your mind and learn about things and learn what you like. And so I love that yours had like the 30% of liberal arts. I think that's really important. So for teens and young adults who aren't able to get an education, how do you recommend that artists kind of expand their mind and grow as an artist?
well, I think just, it's like a muscle. It's like an exercise. I
Right.
think just keep drawing, keep making. Drawing from observation, I think is one of the most beautiful and kind of fundamentally human skills that we have.
Mhm.
You can go back in time and like that's what the early humans were doing on the cave walls. Like
Yeah.
there's something so fundamentally human about our desire to look at a thing and represent it in front of us. And so if you have paper, if you have a pencil, you can do that. Like you don't need fancy supplies, you don't need a fancy studio. I do think there's something really important about the physical skills. I think
Mhm.
we're living in a fascinatingly digital time, and I definitely do a lot of my work relying on digital tools, and they're really helpful. But I think nothing can beat just like putting a physical mark on a physical paper or making something physically with your hands. I think that's such a human connection.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of the few things that we have right now that gets you off a screen is whether you're like working with your hands or reading a book or something that is so valuable to being an artist. So for kids who maybe don't have as supportive parents, who maybe don't understand why do you want to study art in college? What kind of careers do you think are out there for students to explore? I know I so relate and understand about not having that be a focus in college, but maybe post college. What kind of things can you do as an art major?
I think art just opens the door to so many different things. And I say that now, teaching at Johns Hopkins, I we don't have an sorry, now teaching at Johns Hopkins, uh I teach a lot of STEM majors art classes. So they're not art
Uh,
majors.
that's
I'm
amazing.
teaching chemists, I'm teaching biologists, I'm teaching math majors, a lot of pre-med.
Mhm.
And I write as an art teacher a tremendous amount of pre-med letters of recommendation,
Ooh, that's cool.
which is one of the most fun parts of my job. But I truly believe that, if I've got someone in my class who's pre-med, who's going to go on to be a doctor or a researcher or a scientist, and if they're taking a foundation drawing class and really working on observational drawing skills, if I can help a future doctor walk into a room with a patient and like really look at that patient before they make a decision, before they move forward with something, like I think that's a huge skill.
So true.
And I
Yep.
think that's the kind of stuff that can change the game. And so I think we have a real tendency to kind of silo skills. And I
Mhm.
see that a lot too. The art school folks will often say, like, I'm an artist, I don't do math. Or science school kids will say, I'm a scientist, I don't do art.
Yep.
And they are so beautifully intertwined that I think the more we say that, the more we believe it versus the more we let people explore those intersections, the more well-rounded, future doctors, lawyers, chemists we will have who,
Absolutely. I love that. And I think, the skill of creativity is useful no matter what industry you're in, just to be able to think on your feet, think in different ways, so important. What would you say to teens who maybe they're on the fence about entering the awards? Maybe it's their first time entering a piece, first time showing their art to anyone. How would you advise them on getting past those nervous jitters?
I think the beauty of entering these kinds of competitions and these kinds of judged situations as an artist and as a creative person is you never know who's going to see your work through this experience. And so it's of course, everybody wants to win. Winning is great. Winning feels wonderful. That validation is absolutely amazing. But if you can kind of put that little part of you to the side and remember that doors will open from people just seeing your work, and seeing you engage in this. I had that experience recently where I applied to a show, didn't get into the show, and then the curators contacted me separately and were like, "You weren't right for this, but you're right for this other thing," which is something that happens so often in creative fields. Just getting your work in front of new eyes
Yeah.
is completely is the deal. It's the deal. It's why we do it. And yeah, I think it's also just a testament to what you've achieved. I think no matter what the outcome is, being proud of what you've made and wanting to show it to someone is a huge accomplishment in and of itself. Yeah.
Along those lines, since you work with young people so much, is there anything that young artists have taught you?
Oh my God, so much. They're so young artists are so creative and inventive and come up with so many unique solutions. And I think it's so hard to be new at something and so hard to be new and bad at something. And I think to be a young artist and to be a young creative person trying something new is so wildly inspiring and so beautiful that I think we all need to do something that we're bad at, without a fear of failing. Just, I tell my students all the time that if they have to submit to me, we're doing a knitting sample. If you need to submit to me a pile of knots and tell me that you tried your best, like I will still give you an A on that pile of knots because that's honest to you. And I think a lot of us, especially once we're a little more established and once we're good at something, it's hard for us to be bad at something new. And so whatever it is, if it's a pile of knots, make it. And then
That's
the next
amazing.
pile of knots will be better. You never know.
You sound like an amazing teacher. That's
Thank
awesome.
This is Hot Seat.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, awesome. Okay. What is a must-have item for you in the studio?
A really sharp pencil.
What is your favorite material to work with?
Silk.
Best time of the day to be creative?
10 p.m.
Podcast music or silence while working?
Audiobook.
Your favorite location to get inspiration for your art?
A long dog walk.
Classical or contemporary art?
Contemporary.
Describe your artistic style in 3 words.
Precise, detailed, airy.
What are you currently working on?
Right now, I'm actually zooming through an episode of America's Sweethearts looking for my next screenshot to turn into a portrait.
Fantastic. What great research you have to do.
It's so fun. Never do research if you're bored by it.
For sure, for sure. And our last question is, where can our audience find you? Do you have a website, an Instagram, anywhere where people can reach out to you?
Absolutely. My website is sashabaskin.com. My Instagram is @sashbask, the first part of my first and last name. And then I'm also on TikTok, but I don't post super often. Also Sashbask, where I sometimes post a speed run bob and lace to a pop song for fun.
Amazing. Well, Sasha, thank you so much for just your inspiration and your wisdom. And I am absolutely going to be watching some reality show tonight. I don't know about everyone listening, but I will.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, artists and writers, that's it for today's episode. As always, thank you so much for listening and for supporting creative teens. If you were so blown away by today's episode, you'd like to support teen artists and writers further, check out the donate link in our show notes. National announcements are coming up this month, so keep an eye on your inboxes. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, so you receive all of our updates. So much of the beauty of art comes with connection, so let's connect and stay creative. Bye, everyone. See you next time.